Stories from the heart, stories honest and true, the one, the only, the human canvas you. Hello and welcome to The Human Canvas, the podcast where we explore our unique lived experiences, exploring the lives of people from all walks, diving into their unique journeys, their challenges, their passions, and the moments that have shaped who they are today. I'm your host, Nicholas Graham Hall, and today I'm honored to welcome to the podcast Rolfer and Astrologer, Allison Distler. Hi, Allison.
Hey, Nicholas.
Hi, it's good to see you.
You
And
too.
so and so I've had the pleasure of being a client of Allison, and her area of expertise is Rolfing. And I don't know about all the listeners, but I mean when I hear Rolfing, I kind of hear like a dog going ruff ruff. That's like, but I know it doesn't have anything to do with that. But I was talking with a friend and I said, the term, for example, the term Reiki, I think a lot of people have probably heard that term, or certainly I feel like more people are aware of like that particular practice where um, than in prior generations. And to me, Rolfing could be one of those types of practices that, we might call it alternative, or people just probably are not, at least in the Western, perhaps. Um, but that's why I'm here talking to you, because I have a lot of questions. And 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 I also have benefited from receiving the treatment. So, but I'm really curious, Allison, not only you're a practitioner, but just your journey, your sort of how you discovered the practice. And then I know that you've continued to get deeper and deeper as a practitioner. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and sharing with our listeners a little bit about yourself, and then, beginning to share about your journey with Rolfing.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of people I've come across when they hear rolfing or I type it into something, it always comes up as roofing. So
You must be
they,
misspelling. You must be,
you're
obviously, you're looking
so
for
you're
a
a roofer,
roofer.
right? So
Right.
I'm like, no, it is somewhat of of course, a manual, I want to say a manual labor practice, just, in the same sense as any body worker or other people practicing musicianship or manual labor. Um, Rolfing is actually named after the founder of Rolfing, which is Ida P. Rolf. So another term for Rolfing, the broader sense is structural integration. So people who call themselves Rolfers are people who are trained by the Rolf Institute, which is now located they just moved offices. They used to be in Boulder, Colorado, then Gun Barrel, and they moved offices just last year. But those of us who were trained at the Rolf Institute were called Rolfers. And then there's a whole practice of structural integration practitioners that can be trained in kind of parallel bodywork practices, and they will be called structural integrators. So it's kind of like a whole field. So
Okay.
Rolfing is a bodywork that was developed by Ida P. Rolf, and Ida Rolf started practicing in New York. She was a biochemist, also a yoga practitioner, and then she developed Rolfing from her studies of things like osteopathy and other modalities. So she is sort of the cultivator, inventor of the method itself.
And what is she still alive, or what time period? Like when did it start to become something perhaps beyond what she was just practicing herself to beginning to train other people?
Yeah. I know some folks are a little better in historical details than I am, but I do know that she passed in the early 80s.
Okay.
Um, She was training folks in like all throughout that time, starting in, I believe, the late 50s, 60s, 70s. She she worked at Esalen when Fritz Perls was also
Okay.
doing a lot of Gestalt work there. So there was a
Hmm.
parallel in that period of time at Esalen. So a lot of people who were exposed to Rolfing early on around that time might
Yeah.
have experienced it at Esalen. And from at the very beginning, she trained just like 5 practitioners that went on and became those 5 went from her and then trained many people from that. So it was a small group.
Yeah.
And then it sort of branched out and landed in being in Colorado as a school.
Not when you share, it's not, I'm not surprised that she was swimming in the same waters
Yes.
with the folks at Esalen. And I've learned a bit about Gestalt therapy and sort of the body work and somatic. So maybe, um, could you share, so understanding her practices, um, how would you relate it to other sort of other forms of body work, perhaps how it complements or how it's different? Like, I mean, I'd say a lot of people are sort of familiar with massage therapy,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of the most probably common body work that people are familiar with here in the West. But I know from having experienced massage therapy, but then also Rolfing, it's quite uniquely different in many respects. So, and maybe also, what did Ida have a particular like that you're aware of, or even just the practice, a particular aha, like something noticed something that was possible or available or maybe missing with other other types of body work that was being done or available.
Yeah. I think primarily Ida wanted to get across the message that Rolfing was a form of education. And
Hmm.
when I first got into Rolfing, my mentor had said, if you get into this, it was great. He said, I want you to sort of be aware that Rolfing is a way of thinking.
Hmm.
So both of those things really intrigued me because it is a body work, but it's based in holism. And
Hmm.
holism and Rolfing is one of the few modalities that is primarily concerned with bringing a structure together to make sense of itself on at least 5 different dimensions. So we, as Rolfers, are trained in the structural and the psychological biomechanics of a structure, the geometry, the energetic. They're called taxonomies. Um,
Hmm.
and then the other one, psychobiological, structural, functional, geometric, and energetic, which are the 5, I call them dimensions, but they'll call them taxonomies when you learn Rolfing, that
Hmm.
in the work can be done at all one or many of those layers. And the idea is to bring those layers together. So that's where integration comes from. And I find that, well, I love body work. So they're all very helpful. And I find that other body works are very specialized and they're more deconstructive. So
Hmm.
they'll work on like one thing, and they might be really good at that, but they don't necessarily have the integration part.
So, uh, and when did you first, so I guess your mentor introduced
Mhm.
the idea. So when was the idea first, and were you doing other types, were you practicing other types of body work or yeah, what was what
Mhm.
other, what else was happening for yourself at that time? And I guess is what intrigued you was the holistic approach, it sounds like to me.
Somewhat. For me, um, as a felt sense or like kinesthetic person,
Hmm.
um, when I was 23, I met my mentor, and it was kind of one of those happenstance things. I had just graduated studying psychology and sociology at an undergrad level, and I was applying to do graduate work in sociology. I studied psychology, the psychology of mental illness, and the sociology of mental illness. So I was wondering, my question out of undergrad came like, what holds us together as people? So you can see why
Mm.
I went into Rolfing. So my life's question so far at that time was like, why, how do we hold ourselves together? How do we make a narrative or make sense of things from the outside in and the inside out? And I still was like, even though I was applying to do graduate studies in sociology, I had this real dilemma of being a person who researched people
Mm.
rather than somebody who was involved in the actual clay and humanity of people. So I was at a crossroads. And so this gentleman came into my life. And when I was like,
Mhm.
I went into his office and I didn't really know while I was there, but I sat across from him and the impact of his structure, the way he felt and the things he said, I just knew that this person was going to be my mentor. And I asked
Hmm.
him later on. And so he was a rolfer and I didn't really know what that was. I didn't know I was going to become one. And I think at 23, when I met this person,
Yeah.
I probably took me about oh 5 years of studying with him before I was like, okay, I think I might end up becoming a rolfer. And then I went to school when
Oh,
I was
wow.
31. So
Wow.
I studied with him almost all the way through Rolfing school. And then I had to sort of launch on my own because I needed to develop my own instead of learning from this person as sort of an advisor or sort of a spiritual mentor. I needed to
Mm.
be able to go into the practice, learn for myself, and just get messy in it without any other like direct advice, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you continue with your graduate studies
I did
as
not.
well? You did not. Okay.
I made a turn and it was almost to the point where the impact of this person and what they were saying and the life that they were um, helping me see
Mm.
was what I was looking for. And I stopped um, going the direction that I felt fragmented in regards to.
And so you began the Rolfing study in your early 30s, is that right then?
That's when I went to school.
Okay.
Before that, it took me about 7 to 8 years to prepare
Hmm.
myself to be able to go to school to learn at that level because I was young and I had had no body work experience. I'd never been to a yoga class. I was academically minded. I thought I was going to be a researcher. I was very in my head, and I knew when I met this person that I had to do some other things
Mm.
first before I was able to enter. And I'm glad I did because that Rolfing school is quite an initiation. It was
Yeah, can
good.
you can you share about that, what that was like?
Yeah, I like to joke with people that if you've ever had one of those like anxiety nightmares where you're standing in a classroom in your underwear in front of everyone while they look at you, that's Rolfing school. So you might have had premonitions that you might land there. It's a way, I think, in a positive sense, it's a way to go through the process of refining your mind to be able to understand intellectually the entire body system. So we do entrance exams, which is anatomy and physiology, and cadaver labs, which is in the second phase, where you really get exposed to all the intellect, the physiology, and parts of the body in a person and on a cadaver table. And then the other part of that is training your system to be able to see clearly. And you have to do that by having bodies in front of you, just standing and being willing to be exposed and to walk and to go across the room and be on tables. So gratitude to the people who are willing to do that and get to the point where they can just yeah, take a breath and decondition themselves around exposure um, and learning to love and be curious about all kinds of bodies, all of them.
It sounds like this is not this is not a small undertaking. I mean, this sounds like a pretty significant commitment to. So when you're, so I'd be curious, like what the journey was like in terms of, were you going, did you have to go somewhere? Was it, again, I mean, most people are maybe thinking of like graduate school where they go and live
Yeah.
somewhere for a few years. I don't, is it different? Is it different than that? Is it something where most of the people that are studying it have some other kind of work that they're doing, and this is something that they
Mhm.
would add to their practice, or are most of the people that go to, make the determination to go to school, become a rolfer, is that what they end up, if they're able to, that's their primary focus when they complete the study?
Yeah, I would say the latter, because for me, it took 3 years to go through, and I'm sort of a slow, thorough learner. There's 3 phases, and folks can do it in like an 18 to 24 month. Like, if you really feel eager and you might not have a lot of other things going on, you can. I wouldn't recommend it to folks, but a lot of people do it. It's just different. They have
Yeah.
different processing speed. So it is comparable to, I would say, a master's program of study, with all of the other elements of yeah, the psychobiological capacity to go through something that is like so intimate.
Mhm.
So there's that layer. And I think that when I went to school, I was in a place where I was able to live part-time in Bloomington, Indiana, and part-time in Colorado. So I would do like a third of the year in Colorado where the school is. And then I would go back to Bloomington because I was teaching yoga at the time and nannying and doing jobs that
Yeah.
allowed me to be a bit more flexible. Most of the people that came into school, about half of them were already massage therapists, and they determined that Rolfing was, they had it, they experienced it, or something like that, and then they went on to become Rolfers. The other half of us, like myself, were people from all walks of life, people changing careers, people just getting started. And most people who do come out of the program and finish it do become Rolfers if their body and mind allows them to carry the practice on over time. Um, it is a physical discipline. So just we get taught body mechanics very well. So most Rolfers have a bit more longevity than massage therapists, but it's still, you got to get out in the field and practice to see if you're going to be able to, um, yeah, handle the demand of it.
Right. And what would you, um, like, I think people have a sense of, oh, I hurt my knee, or I, twisted my ankle, and, my ligaments are screwed up. So I'm going to go to PT, and they're going to assign, different exercises to do. Or you go to a massage therapy because, you got an ache or a pain here or there. And how would you describe sort of the experience of Rolfing, and um, do clients, I mean, I probably be, part of me was probably curious, and then
Mhm.
part of me is, as is continually addressing, um, personally, an issue with my lower back. But are there common reasons why someone would go, huh, maybe this Rolfing can make a difference
Mhm.
for me? I suppose you probably, as I barely, some of my basic understanding, I imagine you see people walking around or sitting with all these various
Mhm.
postures.
Yeah.
Because I understand it, Rolfing is really, like, for me, what I understand is helping to adjust our posture,
Yeah.
our overall posture. but I think there's a lot of energy. It sounds like there's more to it that even I don't understand. Okay, I'm talking too much, not getting the question out because there's so much that I'm curious about. But what would you say like most of the clients sort of expectations are or what they're coming to you for? And I guess I'm also curious is what they're coming to you for. Is it actually what Rolfing offers, or it's also probably an education process, I imagine, helping
Mhm.
people understand
Mhm.
exactly what to expect from the
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. It reminds me, and I think about it all the time, especially when I first meet people. Ida Rolf said, the first session, no matter what, or when you meet people, I will do discovery calls too, is rapport. And the rapport, by what she meant is, it reminds me a bit of, I think what Ron Kurtz used to say is like making friends with the unconscious or the spirit of a person that is looking for something. So the first part of Rolfing is to meet whatever person on the level of where they're coming in and befriend that impetus to come in and discover and work on themselves. So it is true that I'm listening for that in everybody. So I really quickly in my own mind's eye, ascertain like whether somebody's coming in for a real material structural focused point of view. And if that's kind of the case, I'll meet them at that level. I also meet people at levels where they're having body image issues and they just don't feel right, which is kind of a different level of meeting and understanding people on. Folks who have like CPTSD and body trauma, that's a different layer of meeting
Mm.
someone than someone who's had two surgeries on their ankle and they got a lot of scar tissue and they got no talar glide, so their ankle isn't working, and they're really not going to care so much if necessarily if they're going to work through some like emotional psychological layer of things, but they really are invested in wanting to get their ankle moving again. So a rolfer is generally presented and oftentimes meets people at the fringes of every single other healing modality: psychology, chiropractic work, physical therapy, medical surgeries that are happening or may have gone weirdly. Um, and artistic people, people who are curious about like the body being a malleable object, dancers, musicians. So um, a wide variety of people.
And then so you have that sort of initial intake, and
Mhm.
then what is mm, I guess what is it that someone would ex what the benefits that someone might expect over the course of their time with you? And I imagine it, yeah, probably depends on what they're coming to you for. And maybe and maybe you could maybe there's like a for example in how how you would approach that example and maybe how that differs from again physical therapy or other types of modalities, how the approach of Rolfing is similar, but in some ways, but different in others.
Yeah. Um, like for example, I'm just thinking of one of the last people that I saw. This person's been doing Rolfing for a while, and I'm not doing a 10 series with them. So if somebody comes to me and they're brand new, I often will, and they're new to Rolfing and they've got a garden variety of things going on. I will generally say, if we do a 10 series, the Rolfing 10 series, that will comprehensively go around your body into places that you know about and don't know about that might be contributing to your postural imbalances. So what happens if someone comes through a 10 series is often a couple different things. Um, the thing that they originally came in for, say like a, problem with their shoulder glide or something going on with their rotator cuff, they will generally experience an ease of that over time, but also they will then internally in their body map will increase to understand how that arm is connected to the rest of the fascial system in the body. So there's movement retraining involved in that. So there's always educational pieces. And then there's an important part of doing the best we can to support and or relieve discomfort so that a body can get back to doing what it likes to do. If it's not possible to completely get rid of those signals of pain, what we try to do is get to those things that a person really, really needs and wants to do functionally, and then try to do some work around how to support that function in a new way. So, yeah, that it almost ends up being this kind of I like to liken it to a bit of a car mechanic where you're like, we do the whole thing, we can get kind of like a whole new body system going, and that usually will like smooth out the creaky sounds in the body. But we can also do like this spot session, where we work if someone has for example, like tennis elbow, they may really want to try to do 3 to 5 advanced, like what we call an advanced series, 3 to 5 sessions that works just with the arm and then threads that back into the fascial network. So those 3 to 5 sessions might be focused on the arm, but I will do other body work to make sure that the fascial sheath is not, like pulling too far over to one side and creating an imbalance. So there's always I guess at the foundation of things, no matter what, a person often understands how to find their own center a lot more than they did before they came in.
Mm,
And
mm.
the Rolfing line is what that's called, is we're looking at where this person can find that line of healing that lines them up with that universal influx of healing energy.
Got it.
Mhm.
So something that I've noticed in, for example, in my yoga practice, that there are some poses where on one side it's it's more flexible or I have greater range than on the other side. Um, and I imagine that unconsciously our body is probably always compensating for different limitations that
Yeah.
maybe that we have, and that I always say like my issue with the like with my lower back, that it'll be the simplest little thing, the simplest little straw that will quote break the camel's back. And I often wonder, well, is that just months and months of little compensations, and then something then is just like, okay, it's done. No more compensations.
Yeah.
So I'm just, and I had to imagine you're seeing people walking and sitting, and you probably you're probably seeing a lot of lack or just structural, one shoulder is higher than the other, and the gait and all sorts of, you're probably seeing potential clients walking all around. Um,
Yeah.
Imagine everywhere. So, yeah, is that a real, is that one of the aspects that you're noticing and working with, is that sort of
Mhm.
that unconscious imbalance that people with their bodies, just the adjustments that they are making again to try and compensate moment to moment, and but it just they get more and more out of alignment and trying to help them with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the more, and I love how you said at the beginning, like that this is a practice, and it feels like to me it's like playing a musical instrument or anything else that you have a long practice with. Is like at first you get trained in the layers of seeing, and there's a responsibility that comes along with it, because it's not always, I think being ready for the personal soulful and psychological impact that you have once you start seeing bodies walking around and like knowing when to turn that seeing on
Mm,
and when to go peripheral. And at first, I think every rolfer and most of us are very like when we get trained and we learn how to see, we see the structure first. So it is really common for like if I look out and I'm like, yeah, there's one shoulder higher and and I'm looking at the structure in this way. But as I develop practice more and touch more bodies and understand, there's also that thing underneath that's like, how available is this structure for making a change? What
mm,
is the mechanics underneath that?
mm,
Where it is often where it isn't. So when you
mm,
see something, it means that oftentimes, or a lot of times, where it's not always the case. Sometimes, like when I was talking to you about spinal issues, when there is actually like a nerve impingement, there's often actually a nerve impingement. So it's really great to get as clear as we can if we need to medically. This isn't a substitute for like getting stuff looked at with
yeah.
imaging. I'm a pretty good x-ray vision person, but I can't see all the little details.
Yeah.
But a lot of times in the global posture of a body, there is something else that is quote, holding the posture in its energetic shape, and it may or may not be coming from within the body. So
Mm,
we practice by bringing someone to the rolfing bench or just, having them walk, or I might just put my hand, like I might stand them up and then I'll say, well, what makes it hard to be like this? And sometimes people will be like, well, I don't really know what makes it hard to kind of be in my line. And then like when they walk off to the parking lot, I see their body kind of shift back. So we don't
mm,
know. Again, the five taxonomies or the five questions are like, is that a structural thing? Is it a functional thing? They're used to leaning like this, getting in the car. Is there a psychobiological sort of trauma response, like something's gonna hurt? So I do
mm.
this, I have
Yeah.
a wincing vibe. So the more I practice, the better I get at continually asking the questions, at what layer is this happening? And
Mm,
also to name the like ancestral and energetic dimensions that we can be affecting us, including environmental, the life of the environment around us, because some folks who do have the so-called they'll come in with like a dowager's hump or something. They just feel like they can't extend the front of their body, or their thoracic spine is stuck. And in a
mm,
rolfing session they sit pretty well, but they go home and someone yells at them and
mm,
they're gonna duck down again. And
mm,
so the education part of so-called posture, which is a living thing, is that to help each other find out why it is or how it is that we're shaping ourselves and
mm.
being shaped by the life of the world.
Are there other practices that an individual might participate in that would support their Rolfing journey? Like, are there, whether it's acupuncture or yoga or um, counseling, or I mean, I'm hearing all these different um, energy and structure, and I'm, yeah, I guess, or is that, are many of your clients be, to find Rolfing, do they find Rolfing because they are a seeker, or they're curious, or they're on a bigger journey, and
Mhm.
you're not surprised that they're there?
Yeah, the more I practice, the more that it just feels just kind of how I walked into my mentor's office and I was like, I don't really know why I'm here. And he was like, well, how did you get through that door? And I was like, I'm not sure. I think the best things in life are often like when we're at that, what is it called? An impasse, where we're like, I don't really know the next direction. I don't really know what's going on. And it's like, wow, that's a fruitful spot to get
Mm,
started in something, because Um, the interesting way about the I think that the way that we think about our body and the way that we think about organizing ourselves is that we often, and we still get into the like the mind directing the body. So if I think about this practice, that's going to be good and that'll be doing that. And then there's this time where the body speaks for itself. And oftentimes the
Mm,
mind doesn't know. And we're like, whoa, nothing feels
mm,
right for me in the practices that my mind knows about.
mm.
And so, yeah, when I meet people for Rolfing, I will often, since it's structural integration to sort of holism, it'll be often the things that folks haven't done a lot of yet, or it will be things like, if people come in and they've been a yogi and they've been a dancer and they've done a lot of Pilates and they come in and they're not feeling well in their back or something.
Mm.
This sometimes can be hard. I'm thinking of one client who really loves Pilates, and I haven't had this discussion yet, but I'd like to lift up the question. I know Pilates is your practice, but is it possible that the repetition of that particular practice is what's bringing you into the office?
Right.
And sometimes it's not necessarily my role to tell people what to do, but it's to lift that up and being like, if
Yeah.
that person's practice might actually be like, wow, somatic experiencing might be a nice balance to just actually do not a whole lot on the table, but integrate the psyche soma. But if someone's
Yeah.
been doing a lot of that and they've never went to the gym to do strength training, so they're more of a nebulous sort of structure and they haven't put any bone building joint work in, their structural integration piece might be like, I know you love the psychological work, but what about some good old fashioned squats? You see
Yeah.
what works.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you're talking about that integration
Yeah.
of, um, yeah, the integration of like part of it is to your point, though, also part of it is the psychological. There's something that
Yeah.
perhaps that person is getting psychologically from the Pilates, right? Beyond just the actual work itself. But, and I thought about this myself is like, okay, now that I'm better understanding what, like what my particular situation is, it's like, okay, now how can I approach? I'd like to continue to be active and there's things that I'd like to be able to continue to do. What makes the most sense holistically given understanding what my particular situation is, right? Or what someone given their particular circumstances,
Yes.
what are the practices that if they choose to do them are really most likely to be supportive
Yeah.
and also and those that are more likely to cause issues or challenges and you may still choose to do them but
Mhm.
recognize that it may not be providing the benefit that you're hoping for or looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the really cool part about Rolfing and where it's like incredibly individual. Like, hopefully my skill set, it's like it reminds me like when I have hundreds of bodies under my hand, folks can come in and I can do a little palpation and they can even ask me like, okay, from like what you felt and here's my backstory, here's where I'm at. What do you think might be like a next integrative way to support my structure, my life in the in the age I'm at, in the
Mm,
condition I'm at. And we can sit down and like really have that talk. It's not based on like with physical therapy and stuff, it's so based on printout, and like the some people will come in and they'll say, don't tell me I can't go to the chiropractor. It's like, I'm not ever going to say you can't do anything. But if you want to ask me a question about like what I sense in your body structure, like if I touch and I work with a lot of hypermobile people, I'm one of those people. So I personally do not go to any high velocity, quick moving kind of bone adjustments. That doesn't work for my body. It's really bendy. It's very fluid. People like me if I touch a body that I know it's like that might not be a good fit. I would say I would let them know about that. But there are people that have body structures and conditions where that is actually a decent fit. And if they go and do some chiropractic work and then get some tissue work, they feel for the time being that that's a really good position to go in. But maybe when
Yeah.
they turn 65, that's not so true anymore. So really rolfing and structural integration is like, honestly, where are you right now? Is there anything missing in the integration? And is there something that the mind continues to
Mm,
drive for the body that it might be time to
mm,
um, shift or let
mm.
go of?
Yeah. And have you continued, so you completed the necessary coursework
Yep.
to call yourself a rolfer, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, have you continued with advanced
Yes, indeed.
studies? Yeah.
I just did, this is like slow me going through. Like I did the Rolfing training, and then if you want to do advanced training, become an advanced Rolfer, you need to do it within 7 years of doing your original basic training. So I did the advanced training at seven, like a little over 7 years. It was like, yeah. Um, which, yeah, I think going through the advanced training, I finished that not last February, but the February before. Um, and then, a whole host of like you do have to do continuing education in between. So I am a certified advanced rolfer. Um, and I'm sitting with that now. Last year I started to do some scar work training because I had noticed that I was working a lot with working with systems, and then I'd run into the places where scars were located, and that takes a different kind of approach
Mhm.
in a work to work those scars well. So I keep up with the continuing ed, and I hold the hat of advanced role for now, which is great. And once I've been practicing 20 years, I no longer have to pay my Rolfing membership dues. So I'm on a decade now of full-time
Nice.
practice.
How many practitioners like yourself are there, for example, do you know, in the United States?
Yeah, I would have to go look on, and this is something to name for people who want to find a Rolfer. If you go to the the Dr. Ida Rolf Institute website, there's a Find a Rolfer page, which will list everybody who has been trained and currently like practicing across the world. I believe we've got a North American Association, a Canadian school, Brazil, Germany, and Japan. So those are the main Rolfing headquarters. So I could train here, Germany, Japan, Brazil, Canada. So those are the main schools. You could find people all across the world. And then also to name, there are people who might have went through the Rolfing Institute, no have the training, but have are no longer on Finder Rolfer, but if they may be associated with just call themselves a structural integrator. So if you count all the Rolfers and all the structural integrators, you're going to have a pretty healthy panoply of practitioners. But there are places like Indiana, like the Midwest. If anyone's listening to this and wants to become a Rolfer and become to the Midwest, I will mentor you. Come on out. We don't have that many, and the people who have been here are older. And there are places
Mm.
like Colorado where there's like hundreds.
So it really, I imagine, like, I would, does this still fall under the umbrella of alternative medicine?
I would say so. I
I
love
don't mean, I don't mean that
the
as, I don't, and that's just what kind of we Westerners seem to call anything that doesn't
oh yeah,
fall under the prescription, or, what it still sits outside of traditional health insurance. Is that
absolutely.
correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. And when that comes up, I think to your point too, is like things that go really well together. Like Rolfing would be like an alternative medicine. It's its whole field, but it's not as I want to say fully comprehensive and medicinal as folks who study acupuncture and Chinese medicine, which is you would consider like alternative medicine. And they've got not only a table practice, but herbal recommendations and things like that. So Rolfing is an alternative medicine, but we don't have any of the recommendations like of herbs or exercises necessarily. We often will show some movements and stuff. So it is a bit more specialized than a big field like Chinese medicine.
Gotcha. That's
Mhm.
helpful. I know a lot of people will ask about that. And yeah, and I've noticed, I could be wrong, but I've noticed Western medicine starting to use the term dry needling.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I think that's acupuncture.
I know, and
I mean,
it's
it's
so Western. It's like I've had a little bit of that before, and it's like they have taken something that's a comprehensive sort of like, what I when I've received acupuncture, I do so often. It's very for health reasons.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
again, it's an integrative, like big field. It's not always where it's at, where they're going to place needles, but in like dry needling, they're like, that's where it's at. We're going to put it.
Boom,
It's
boom,
like
yeah,
so, it's like such a like we cannot be separated necessarily from our culture, and that is so
right.
important to I think just to name here is that at best, if I can provide a place that is outside the habituation of the push, Western specific, get stuff done, here's where it is. If we need to have some doorways for bodies to land and for bodies to express themselves in their pain, in their
Mm,
joy, in
yeah.
their boringness, without approaching a body so much from a mental point of view. So we're just shuffling ourselves around. And Rolfing, at least in my practice, like unthreading the agenda is a big part of being able to land on a table and understand where we're at in ourselves.
Mm, that's really well said. It's really well said. Um, I like to, this has been really, really enlightening and really helpful. I appreciate the time. I always like before we wrap up, I always like to say, okay, what questions did I not ask that you would have liked to have answered? Or, what are things that perhaps you haven't had a chance to cover or talk about that you'd like to?
You did such a great job, with the questions. I don't, I think my mind has been so over time to this work in the way that I like live in life, my mind isn't often so hungry for questions and answers, which is really interesting that
Hmm.
no, I just really value that you had some interest in this work um and hopefully through the way we've talked about it today, it's both like it has one of those like those both it lands as a both and thing that Rolfing actually is a thing that we can think about,
Hmm.
but in itself, it's like astrology in a way. Like the more that you think you know about it, the world actually expands. So it's one of these living things that it's good to hold both a mind about, but also remember that the body actually is a consciousness itself. So I think we really did
Hmm.
land
Hmm.
talking about that today. And I'm glad I got to
Hmm.
speak a little to the lineage of Rolfing, and I just want to give gratitude to all the ancestral healers that may or may not have been
Hmm.
allowed to carry their modalities on because of the way that medicine and healing has become a part of capital.
Right,
And
right.
I think there have been, besides Ida Rolf, I also want to name that like traditional healings in like all different cultures have always existed and that part of this work may be, threading through some of that heritage. And there
Yeah.
were bone setters and whales. And so I just want to be a person who is part of a healing environment that recognizes that we've always had that, beyond naming these modalities. And
Yeah.
so that's just something important to name. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And you touched on astrology, and I was like, okay, when I talk to Allison, there's a whole lot of, I mean, the music, there's like, I know there's so much that you and I could have could have talked about, and but I do think your Rolfing practice is a beautiful expression of just, it's an opportunity for you to express who you are in the world. And
Yes.
and um, it takes I feel it takes real a true courage and commitment to do the kind of work that you're doing, especially in you know in a like we live in a country where it's the economy is capitalism, and it's you're rewarded for scale, and you're rewarded for being inside the system and molding yourself to fit inside of that model. And so it does take a real courage and commitment to be who you are, be true to yourself, whatever it takes. And so, you are in areas where people don't, again, you're having to educate people not only on your work, but just what the work is, and helping people to understand the real value and the opportunity um,
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
journey. Because again, we're like, give me the pill, make me feel better, do the surge, do the surgery, fix it. And you're really looking, yes, those specifics are important, but you know, the to your point, the integrating the body, the mind, the spirit, taking that all into account.
Yeah, we are much more, and we are much more than that. And I do feel that, sometimes the reason that we land on a table is because our bodies and minds don't fit into the systems. And
Mm,
if we have some places that can recognize that, um, to facilitate a shaking off of some of the burdens of the systems that we're under, even if it's just, um, uh, a place for a moment, or a place to land in that and recognize it. It's like, I think that does make a difference. So it
mm,
goes back to all the people that have the courage to come into a modality and meet a person that they may not know and be like, well, I guess I'll give this a try. And we meet in that place of possibility, and hopefully we can still keep that alive for each other.
absolutely. Well, I do not host this podcast so that I can, it's not for promotional purposes, but because I am a client of yours, I will give you, all the thumbs up that I can. That I can assure people that if they do go and see you, that they will be well taken care of, and well treated, and I think they will also experience all the benefits from your practice as well. So, but just Allison, thank you again for your time today. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, have a great day. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Stories from the heart, stories honest and true. No one needs